Huh, Irene can nag you to take a break even when you just turned on the game. That's tone deaf. Oh look, more modern Zelda padding. Because rather than just letting you simply walk to the Palace of Darkness, like in the original game, they force a fucking stealth section down your throat like it's Metal Gear Solid. Nobody likes stealth in Zelda. Why do they keep doing this? And it just makes it sting all the more that they refuse to have the invisibility item, the magic cape in this game. Because that would have made the stealth a lot less nerve-wracking. And it would have been a nice reward for your experience and expertise and skill of the game if you could get the magic cape from beating a dungeon before the Palace of Darkness, and then just cheese the stealth section like it's nobody's business. But no! Why does Hilda have to talk to me and waste my time when I first enter the stealth section? Also, I swear the music in this place is familiar. It's not only out of place, not creating the right feeling for sneaking around all tense, like in Skyward Sword, that stealth music was a lot better, but I swear it's ripping something off, but I just can't remember what. At the very least, the guys you're hiding from that you can't simply kill are wearing these helmets that show you the entirety of their scope of vision ahead of them with a light, and you can fuse with a wall to avoid being seen and travel around. But that doesn't change the fact that stealth is so nerve-wracking to me that I put off what would normally be the first dungeon in the Dark World to last, after Turtle Rock. That should really show you how messed up that padding section is. It just makes me love the non-linearity of Lowroll, because if you want to put off the stealth section, you can, and if you hate the ice dungeon, you can put that off too. So why was the game like modern Zelda in its overly bloated linear tutorial forcedness up to this point, where it suddenly remembered that it was supposed to be like Link to the Past? It's kind of late for non-linearity by this point. I would have loved to be able to destroy these guys after I've snuck past them as revenge, like in Phantom Hourglass, but I can't. They're always invincible. It's an interesting bit of backstory Hilda gives you that the guys are sneaking past used to be her own castle soldiers before they started to worship the evil boss of this dungeon. The stealth section has two different cells, one serving as a checkpoint closer to the dungeon, and the guys that you sneak by are all deaf, so you can pop out of the wall right next to them and they won't notice as long as you don't get in the vision zone. I got spotted past the second cell because one of them snuck up on me in front of me out of complete nowhere when I was walking along very narrow pathways that the controls were barely designed for, and was too focused on not falling and trying to get to the piece of heart. The final real challenge of the stealth section is that there's three different guys, two of which walk into each other staying on the bottom row, requiring you to walk between them at just the right time to fuse with a wall, and the third of which is really tensely always standing just in front of the only way out of the bush maze. But luckily he looks around left and right, allowing me to just barely pop out to the right of him and fuse with the outer wall to get around him. I hated seeing that one last guy to sneak past after that scary challenge, but it was fine. There's a save point at the dungeon right afterwards, and then all you have to do is bomb the wall to get to the dungeon. Pretty satisfying, fusing with walls and getting around these guys without ever having to worry about them seeing me. I feel invincible in those walls. So this stealth section is actually pretty easy. It's much less boring than waiting in barrels in Forsaken Fortress. But the fact remains that stealth sections make me way too nervous to enjoy them because I'm thinking too realistically. It's very hard for me to accept the idea that the guards are deaf and have tunnel vision. And the latter at least is greatly helped by the fact that it's in the dark and they have vision cones in front of them. Even with that, I was very tense and being as careful as I could, and I still got spotted once. I liked the music of the Palace of Darkness, how creepy it is. For some reason I forgot it until I heard it again. I guess it's a problem having two creepy dungeon themes with one being more memorable. The music's slow to be ominous. The moving platform in the first room of the dungeon only moves ahead for a little bit after you hit the crystal, and then it returns to where it was before, meaning you can't just hit the switch and leave and have the platform move, which is unintuitive. If they're going to have crystal switches do different things, then they should color code them accordingly. Otherwise, it's totally unintuitive what the switch is going to do. What's even more unintuitive is that you can hit the switch with your sword from behind the wall on the northern side of the room, because your sword clips through the wall. Meaning that at first I thought I was stuck and wasn't sure how to exit the dungeon to save and quit halfway through, because they put the green portal on the north side of the room. Right away, I needed to remember that I could burn things from below with the fire rod in this game in order to burn some wood covering up a window to get the door open by a light switch. I love that they actually make use of the concept of the enemies that mimic your movement at least once, and because in the second room you have to beat them, you have to lure them down to the lower floor to be able to defeat them. Too bad they never do this with them again. It should go without saying that expecting you to dodge a giant rolling ball ahead of you in pitch darkness is extremely cheap. I got hit by 3 times in a row, with the lantern on. I should have lit the torch, but I didn't notice it because the lamp light sucked and I couldn't see it, since it was to the right of me and I went left. By the time I found the second torch, I was halfway through the room anyways. The Palace of Darkness in this game has one major gimmick. There are white floors and glowing white walls that force you to not use the lantern to progress, as they make the lantern create darkness, which are creative at least. I love the white wall room and the white floor with pits room as a result. I can just walk around the wall room and it doesn't really matter that I'm walking in the dark because I know where all the walls are. And with the glowing floor, it might as well not be in darkness at all. I like that gimmick, but it's not enough to make up for the dungeon obsessively living up to its name, and a game where the lantern range is pathetic enough that you might as well be running around blind. Considering the dark rooms are barely playable, it really would have been better if the white walls were a lot more common or darkness was just barely there. It worked for the Palace of Darkness in the original game. You only had the darkness in the basement. You know, like, makes sense. It also has a memorable section of the dungeon in the last room where I got stuck my first playthrough. The puzzle required me to somehow light up the 2 eye switches to progress to the big door, when there isn't really anything you can do in this particular room. It doesn't look like there's any windows on the walls to unboard, so I wasn't sure how to get the light onto them. After going through most of the dungeon, I went through the locked door in the rolling ballroom to get to another floor the next day. This seems to be a dungeon that not only is about the lantern, but the bombs as well, considering how much you use them to break cracked floors and hit switches. I like the gimmick where you have to set a bomb next to a switch and fuse with a wall so that the wall will spin around with you on it. Though I really don't see the point in having only the part of the wall that has a Helmrock design on it spin around. Why can't the entire wall just spin? I see the helmeted enemies are just as annoying to hit as ever. And why the hell does the game insist on stopping during the ta-da chime every time you break open a cracked floor? A Link to the Past never did that. It's pace breaking. After this room, there's 2 different ways to get to the south part of the dungeon, which is good because of how badly designed the east room is. In fact, I didn't even figure out how to progress in it until this playthrough. You have to throw a bomb at just the right time so that it blows up, and the explosion of the bomb turns out to be just enough to hit a switch that opens the door. But only temporarily, so I failed to get through that damn door because the breakable floor broke in the time that I was trying to figure out what the hell to do. And get the bomb to explode at the right time. And you move at the speed of molasses when fused with a wall. Which is weird because I keep expecting that Link can run when he's fused with the wall if I use the circle pad right, but I can't. At least I know what to do there now, but I'm using the west room, thanks. It's literally just the east room except you can place a bomb against the switch and it's brain dead simple. It's like the easy mode. In the south room, I broke the boards in front of a window with the fire rod to let light down to the boss door room, taking advantage of the elevation focus in this game because in Link to the Past, you barely do stuff in higher rooms that affect lower ones. Except for that one time you let light into the boss room with blind. There's another boarded up window that's very easy to overlook because it's right next to a torch, meaning it's easy to overlook the effect of the boards blocking out the light when there's light already. That's probably what got me stuck on the puzzle of this in the big door room so many times. Then I had to notice a third boarded up window right next to a torch and throw a bomb up to it to break it. Again, it's hard to get used to the fact that I can do this in a top-down Zelda game. And it's easier for me to notice boarded up windows that are on the north wall of the room than boarded up windows that are off to the side on the left and right walls. I have a question. If this room is all about being above the boss door room and sending light into it, then why the hell can't I fall from this room to that one? Why does the exact same pit that's supposed to send the light downwards count as a bottomless pit? That just makes it all the more unintuitive that my actions in this room affect the one that's apparently below it, but it doesn't feel like it is, because I can't see or access the room from here. Having the pit be a bottomless pit just makes it feel like this room is an entirely different dimension from the one it's supposed to be in connection with. Also, it's annoying constantly running into invisible booths and getting hit by them. Even if I can see them, I still run into them. They just appear at the center of the camera. I thought the switches in this room were timed at first because they look exactly like the time switches in the previous room, so I thought I had to use a bomb to hit one and hit the other at the same time. Eventually it turned out, once I had done everything, that hitting the switch to the south of the wall south of the big chest room causes it to spin. So I have to place a bomb all the way on the opposite side of the room, make sure the platform is down so I only have to hit the north switch once, and rush to fuse with the wall in time so it'll spin around with me on it. What a clusterfuck. How was I supposed to know that the south switch made the wall spin in addition to the effect of raising a platform just like the other switch, when the wall it affects is off screen? Getting the timing right was exciting though. And the big chest is the final sword tempering ore. Good game design would have had the blacksmith say, "Oh, you have sword tempering ore? Well, get a few more of those and I'll see what I can do for you." So I found the final sword ore in literally the last dungeon with a sage in it. I was expected to beat very specific dungeons to get all 4 ores, not 3, which would have been slightly reasonable, 4. This sucks considering that in Link to the Past, I could have the 3rd best sword the minute I got one dungeon item from Thieves Town, which sounds broken, but considering how many hits it takes to beat stuff like the Cyclops in the overworld, it made sense. Here I have to go through 4 dungeons, and by that point I might as well beat them too, getting halfway through low roll before I can upgrade my shitty sword. There's a bombable wall on the middle floor that you can bomb only by placing a bomb on a rising platform at exactly the right time so that it blows up on the lower elevation. The only reason I knew to do that was because the map tells me there's a room south of here, because from a top-down perspective, I had no possible way of seeing a cracked wall there. It feels arbitrary that the bomb's explosion can't reach that far down, and I have to unintuitively time placing it. And if only I could have fused with the cracked wall, I would have seen it, but even then I never thought to do that because I never saw it at all. A Link to the Past never did this. So I tediously broke the dickishly hidden cracked wall and got to a fairy fountain, of course. And let this be a testament to how modern Zelda this game is. I tried to catch the fairies with the bottle at first, completely forgetting the net. It really goes to show just how far removed this game is from Link to the Past that I forgot they were still going with that one thing. The room on the east of the middle floor also has a hidden entrance to a room south of it, which again, I only knew that room existed because of the map. At least its cracked wall is on the upper level, and going to the room from the lower level behind the rising platform through a secret entrance completely impossible to see lets me get a chest with 1 monster spoil in it. So I thought to bomb the wall because I'd already been to the room south of here and knew there was a benefit to entering it from the upper level. I still completely overlooked the fact that there even was a cracked wall to the south wall, because the camera angle of this game is slightly different from Link to the Past, kind of hiding the south walls from sight. Even after I bombed the southern wall, I still couldn't actually see the entrance I created from it. In Link to the Past, you had no problem seeing the southern walls just as well as the other ones. Whatever, now let's backtrack all the way back to the boss storeroom because they never thought to put the green portal there. When I reached the boss storeroom, for some weird reason the light from the upper room only hit the eye switch and made the obstructions move away when I entered the room. That's the slowest moving light ever. All of this to waste my time watching an animation of the obstructive crystals moving away, and then I'm still not allowed to move for a few seconds because the ta-da chime is playing. If they were going to show us that animation, they could have logically shown it to me after I solved the puzzle in the upper room, instead of just showing me a light from the bottomless pit and expecting that to be self-explanatory. The boss of this dungeon, like the rest of the dungeon, requires the bombs. You know, you'd expect a whole dungeon based around using bombs to be a lot earlier in the game since the bombs are such a basic Zelda item. I still love the idea of taking advantage of them so much for the various puzzles in the dungeon, but the darkness / glowing floors and wall gimmick and the bombs don't mix at all. It's like they decided the dungeon's whole gimmick wasn't enough, and they made it about bombs instead halfway through. But yeah, the boss has a rupee-filled mask that you throw bombs at, that has a backstory where it was created by the people worshipping it, making you love the fact that bombs explode the minute they hit something they're thrown at. Also, I forgot that the game pads itself out by forcing you to waste time lighting 4 torches before the boss will attack you. Oh, 2! That's better, I guess. They're on opposite corners from each other though. The boss actually loses his mask forever really quickly. I was surprised. I expected that I would be throwing bombs at it until my meter ran out, and then I'd be forced to spend the rest of the boss limited to throwing only one bomb at a time, as my meter would take forever to refill. And the mask mostly just gives out green rupees, but there are a few better rupees at least. Weirdly enough, only the mask is vulnerable to the bombs, while the jewel on the head of the unmasked boss is only weak to the sword, which isn't intuitive for a boss in a bomb-centered dungeon. And you'd think with the boss running all around the arena, that I would be able to place bombs and use my strategy of placing bombs to have them blow up when the boss is over them to damage the boss. But instead, it doesn't really work. To my surprise, the boss doesn't regrow its mask to force me to break it again like typical Zelda boss padding. Instead, it started running around the room like crazy, making the room go dark, attacking me with attacks that are unavoidable when I'm focused on running all the way from one side of the room to the other lighting torches. By the way, this boss isn't really unique at all in this respect, because there's a boss where you fight a ghost in Four Swords Adventures where you have to light all the torches multiple times to damage the boss. And at least that made sense because it was a ghost. This is just some Helmrock guy that's apparently invincible unless you get the light. I lit all the torches, and while his headbutt felt unavoidable when I was just focused on swinging my sword, he died really quickly after that. This was definitely a dungeon they expected you to do early on, which was tone deaf for them since they should have known players would all put off doing the stealth section. I remember Gully pretending to be all scared not knowing what's going on at first. But maybe they removed that joke for the French translation, because all he does is ask what a sage is. Good, because that joke wasn't funny. Gully logically shouldn't have known what was going on when his crystal was broken apart, because he was unconscious from the time he was put in a painting to the time Link rescued him. Anyways, Link gets the Triforce courage that he didn't get born with for some weird reason, after my time is wasted with the camera panning round to every sage sending light out from their heads, when we could have seen all of them doing that at once and been a lot faster. Oh wait, he doesn't get it right away. Instead, they arbitrarily send the Triforce all the way up in the weird dimension and force me to walk up the stairs for 6 billion years until I finally get it. Because padding! It's not epic enough to just walk into the thing. I mean, Minish Cap didn't force me to walk all the way up a staircase every time I wanted to collect an element. Playing epic music and making the element magically appear to me was enough. I didn't need to walk up a staircase and feel inclined to talk to sages who all just compliment Link generically, making me waste my time. The music isn't even epic, it's really boring and forgettable. Then I warped away with Irene, who feels the need to remind me that I had the Fortune Teller's glasses. I'd like to point out that I've beaten all the dungeons of Lorule and I still don't have enough money to officially buy all of the items I rented. This might be too effective of a rupee sink then. Because once I beat the final dungeon, that's it. It doesn't matter to me anymore spending the money I have. Let's count how many different times I had to throw money in the fairy fountain in a row before I'd run out of rupees. Oh, 3! That's it. At least I'm allowed to throw 200 at once. But that's still ridiculous compared to just giving me an option to throw all of my money in there. And even after giving her all my money, I still didn't get the 4th bottle. I am about to go into the last dungeon, and I still don't have the 4th bottle. Something has gone horribly wrong. Compare this to every other Zelda game where you guaranteed have the 4th bottle at this point. So after that, I still couldn't get the blacksmith to do his fucking job and temper my sword, as I wonder how he didn't go bankrupt from refusing to make swords and become a thief or monster maker like everyone else in the town. So I had to outright look up a guide, and oh, I was supposed to upgrade the sword the first time with Hyrule's blacksmith, and Lorule's blacksmith was the second one. This wasn't intuitive to me at all because, sure, you use Hyrule's blacksmith in Link to the Past, but this game has already changed so much as it is that I wasn't necessarily taking it for granted that something would remain unchanged from Link to the Past. Combine that with the fact that when you talk to Lorule's blacksmith, he talks about swords, whereas I was given no reason whatsoever to talk to Hyrule's blacksmith. In Link to the Past, you were given an incentive to go talk to the blacksmith because you have to save his partner in the Dark World. In this game, the blacksmith is where Link starts out working, much like in Minish Cap, where you had no real incentive to go back to Smithy there either. so I didn't feel like I had anything to gain from going to him when the game wasn't naturally leading me to him. And I was used to the Link to the Past mindset where you go get the golden sword from the pyramid by throwing it into a fountain, not from tempering it with a whole bunch of ores at a blacksmith. Do you know how confusing it is that there are 2 blacksmiths in this game? It says something that I totally forgot I could take advantage of both. A Link to the Past only had 1 blacksmith. Why couldn't Irene, instead of reminding me that I have bottles and should take a break, why couldn't she have hinted at me to upgrade my sword with Hyrule's blacksmith? I do feel pretty silly for not realizing I had to go temper the sword at the same place as Link to the Past, but they were giving me a much stronger inclination to go talk to the Lowell blacksmith, who foreshadowed how he could temper swords right away. And they gave me no inclination to go talk to the Hyrule one ever again. So if anything, I thought they had switched it up to be unique, and you would get the level 3 sword in Lowell and the level 4 sword from Hyrule. Guess not. So because of how unintuitive and misleading the game was, I didn't have a sword that was worthwhile until I had already beaten almost every dungeon in the game. I'd like to remind you that in Link to the Past, I would have had the best sword in the game by now, before even beating the final Dark World dungeon. Because I would have used the Super Bomb on a wall after getting the penultimate crystal to get the best sword upgrade and the best arrows, which you only get in the final boss battle in this game at literally the last second, and you're only allowed to use them in a wall, where no enemies are other than the final boss. How is this not a downgrade again? Lowell's enemies take even more hits to kill than the Dark World's enemies, so how does it make sense to make it even harder to get the best sword early? I can't feel satisfied getting the sword I should have had 3 dungeons ago, when I'm almost at the end of the game anyways, and in Link to the Past I would have had an even better sword. I don't feel grateful, I feel gypped. At least I can give Gully's mom the good news. Oh look, there's a piece of arcade to the right of her. That's totally just as enjoyable as getting a magic meter upgrade like in the original. You'd think that an upgrade to the regenerating meter would cause it to regenerate a lot faster, and not just increase it. At least the instant you go to the screen with Lowell's blacksmith on it, he calls out to you, seeing your upgraded sword, and wants to upgrade it again. I could have used that kind of intuitive direction last time. Again, Link Between Worlds is so different from Link to the Past and things even as fundamental as the magic meter that they shouldn't have expected you to just take it for granted that everything would be the same. Why shouldn't I have assumed that I could temper my sword in Lowell at first? Even if it is the second world, they could have done a switcheroo. It also would have been a great bookends moment, as you start out the game almost at the first blacksmith, and you get the final sword upgrade at the first blacksmith, the most significant area in Link's life, which would naturally have the most significant sword upgrade. I know I'm just making excuses because I'm embarrassed. You know what would have solved this problem completely? Have it so that either blacksmith can give you either upgrade. I mean, why not? They're both twins of each other. Why would one arbitrarily be a lot better than the other at sword tempering? They should both be of equal ability, and you could maybe have an amusing joke in the second playthrough where it turns out that both blacksmiths insist that they're the best one and are better than each other. But instead, forced linearity of modern Zelda rears its ugly head, as you are completely forced to only use the blacksmith they want you to get the upgrade they assign to them, regardless of whether it makes sense. Hell, if anything, Lowell's blacksmith should be the weaker one, because he explicitly says that he hates making weapons because people use them as weapons. So you'd think that he would have a lot less experience with making swords, and therefore be the much weaker blacksmith, only able to give you the level 3 sword. That and the fact that he talks about swords before the Hyrule blacksmith ever would mention sword tempering for you. Why can't both blacksmiths get you both sword upgrades? This blacksmith had been coming off as a wimp, a wuss, for the entire game up to this point, and now I'm expected to believe he's the only one who can make the best sword upgrade. If he's the best blacksmith, he should be equally as capable of upgrading the level 2 sword to the level 3 one. And in fact, he should be able to upgrade your sword twice. What is it about a sword being tempered that would arbitrarily make it impossible for the same blacksmith who upgraded your sword the first time to do it again? I'd expect the blacksmith that will only upgrade my sword from being really impressed by level 3 one to be the blacksmith that is regularly still making swords, not the one who's basically retired.